One distant day in the past, when I was but a sweet summer child, an innocent young lad whose worldview had yet to be tainted by the greedy grasp of late-stage capitalism, turning on my console and seeing a new game available completely for free tickled my acorns in just the right way. Now imagine my revulsion as the illusion of a game being truly free was slowly but surely shattered, because something felt so odd about these free games. I'd start playing, get through the tutorial, so far so good, and by the time it came to actually play, I was hopelessly confused. I have to keep repeating the same content over and over to make progress? Oh, I see there are upgrades I could buy, but it seems nearly impossible to get that kind of in-game funds. What are all these extra currencies popping up that they're telling me are a great deal to spend real-world money on? I had discovered my first free-to-play games, and I just as quickly discovered that I hate almost all of them. This list is not about those games. It's about sharing with you, our brave indie warriors, a list of games that are not only high quality, but demand nothing of you but your time. It's about fulfilling the fantasy of my own inner teenager, wanting more games to play but wishing they didn't cost either so much money or so much aggravation to play. This is 10 games on Steam that are completely free, without the premium currencies, relentless grind, and toxic communities that often taint that otherwise innocent word. Although some, to be fair, do have some paid DLC if you do in fact want to support the developers. Before I get into my first pick though, allow me to briefly point you to our Patreon in the link below, where you can be an absolute legend by deciding to support honest, independent indie game coverage and enjoy some great perks in the process, like free games depending on your membership tier, and access to our fantastic Discord community. Now, on to the games. First up on the list is South Scrimshaw Part 1, and it's an exceptionally high note to start on depending on your taste. South Scrimshaw won't be for everyone, but those interested in one of the most unique visual novels ever to grace Steam's storefront will be in for a treat. The game ostensibly positions itself as something I've never seen before, a mockumentary without the mock part. Or, otherwise put, a fictional documentary that, rather than aiming to be a satire of an existing documentary, tries its hand at a genuinely heartfelt study of the life of a fictional whale on a faraway planet. It's hard to truly sell the premise of South Scrimshaw without giving away what makes it so magical, so in an effort not to do so, I'll just say that every moment of South Scrimshaw bursts with imagination as it presents us with a creature, the Brillo whale, that's strange enough to feel totally alien, but familiar enough to feel completely believable. And following the trials and tribulations of its early life, which is hopefully to be followed by more given the Part 1 moniker, left me smiling on the edge of my seat and filled with sadness in almost equal measure through the hour and a half or so it takes to complete. Add some stellar artwork into the mix and you have a recipe for a game that, frankly, brief runtime aside, has no business being free. It also works perfectly on the Steam Deck, which is how I personally played it from beginning to end. Again, I don't want to say any more to ruin the experience, but as one of my favorite games I played last year, you have nothing to lose by trying this. Next up on the list is Handshakes, a Sokoban puzzler of sorts that tasks you with finding a way to get two pixelated and mysteriously naked characters to shake hands when they're only able to stretch a limited distance. Handshakes trades away a price tag and extended runtime to give you about an hour of ingenious puzzle design that left me scratching my head just the right amount before the little hamsters turning the gears in it aligned in just the right way to get me to a solution. So for the fairly accessible price of absolutely nothing, anybody even slightly interested in puzzle games should give this one a shot, and by all means do so on the Steam Deck since it too runs perfectly on it. And those like myself who are big fans of it will be happy to know the developer is working on a sequel called Handshakes Hands-On, which will include a bunch of new levels and a community level editor. Keeping up the trend of free games that happen to run perfectly on Steam Deck, as many if not all on this list do, my next pick is Snout. This one actually released over 8 years ago on Steam and is classified as a 2D fighter in its Steam tags, which I don't think quite does the game justice, because this isn't a beat-em-up style fighter like Streets of Rage, but a more streamlined arcadey title most comparable to one of my favorite casual indie games, One Finger Death Punch. In Snout, you play as a piggy who apparently has had more than enough shit from the wolves that constantly try to blow his house down, and is ready to kick some hyena hiney. Okay, fine, I know hyenas and wolves are completely separate animals, but I had to squeeze some alliteration in there, it just sounded so nice. Snout is a score chaser at heart, albeit with a few different modes to choose from and some DLC levels and costumes if you want to support the developers. Controls are as simple as using left and right on the directional pad to punch in their respective directions, up to jump, and down to crouch and slam. And combining these together allows you to jump kick a wolf dressed as Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball, or duck under a pokeball a wolf throws at you before kicking it right back at him. Snout's extensive silliness is on full display at all times, but that doesn't make it shallow. To the contrary, there are so many different types of wolves to fight, and so many things to keep track of at once that getting and continually beating a high score required a lot more skill than at first it seems. And despite the simplistic control scheme, this is a game that just feels great to play and can be learned in under a minute, so I highly recommend giving this one a look if you want some silly arcadey action. Alright, even I'll admit that my next pick is literally a joke game and therefore would probably never cost anything more than $0. But in all fairness, picking apart the various pretensions of one of the most well-known puzzle games of all time makes for a pretty damn good joke. I'm talking about The Looker, a tongue-in-cheek deconstruction of The Witness that will have you laughing at the absurdity of its puzzles while admiring its loving tribute to the popular puzzle game all the same. While the puzzles start stupidly simple by design, there are certainly some clever twists that pop up here and there that make it worth playing even beyond a few laughs. And if you can believe it, yes, this one runs great on Steam Deck too, even if the control scheme felt like a better fit for keyboard and mouse, in my opinion. Either way though, can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with my next pick either, which is a very recent Steam release that caught my attention, and not just because it's free. The Thief, the Witch, the Toad, and the Mushroom is not only quite a mouthful, but one of the most fascinatingly ominous games I've played in some time. Before I go on, let me strongly recommend that you don a pair of headphones for this one because the atmosphere here is key. This is a choose-your-own-adventure visual novel that appears to you as an old library book of fantastical folk tales, read on a stormy night with excellent music complementing the tale. While it's not an especially ambitious game visually, the strange illustrations in the background of every scene look great and help you to picture this mysterious, creepy world that otherwise presents itself only through text. When I say folktales though, to be clear, I mean the original, extra creepy versions full of strange lands you probably shouldn't venture to and sinister characters you probably shouldn't trust. While a playthrough of The Thief, the Witch, the Toad, and the Mushroom can easily be completed in less than an hour, the choices you make throughout it drastically change the trajectory of the story to the point that multiple playthroughs are the only way to truly see all its world has to offer. I personally love how plainly the game commits to masquerading as a choose-your-own-adventure book too, with choices manifesting themselves at the bottom of the page by telling you which page to turn to if you want to trigger a specific action. It's all so incredibly well done that I've got to give it a really strong recommendation for anyone even slightly interested in the game that just barely straddles the line between fantasy and folk horror. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit with this next one. This is actually quite an old and in some circles well-known game, at least to those of us around in the era of Xbox Live Arcade, may it rest in peace. I Made a Game with Zombies in It is a very basic looking cooperative twin-stick shooter that upon release was going for the meager price of $1 for about 30 minutes of fun, which is now $0 on Steam. But oh, what a 30 minutes it is. First of all, this is great fun to play in co-op and have a friend jump in without realizing what sort of experience they're about to have. And if you haven't played it, I don't really want to spoil anything that makes this game special, but just know there is much more than zombies to contend with here. The music is awesome, it runs great on the Steam Deck, and you just have to give it the 30 minutes it deserves to win your heart. That's all, just play it, please. Metroidvania fans, you're up next. Bloody Hell is a bullet hell Metroidvania developed by a trio of Dutch students who were kind enough to release it for free despite the fact that they absolutely should be charging money for this. You play as a bird in heaven who is, for one reason or another, ordered by God himself to go to hell and defeat Satan. Once you're there, prepare for a lot of pixelated blood. Bloody Hell isn't being cheeky with its name, as you'll spend much of its runtime shooting your enemies into bloody pulps that smear across your play areas like you're trying to give them a new coat of paint. But damn, does it feel so good to play. The shooting feels tight, the enemies satisfyingly react to your gunfire, and the difficulty feels finely tuned to make you fight for it a little bit without becoming unreasonably tough. If you ever want to enter the Gungeon to be a Metroidvania instead of a roguelike, with several buckets of blood added on top, you are definitely missing something special if you don't check out Bloody Hell. The great pixel art and fun music are just the cherries on top. Definitely play this game if you have any interest in bullet hells or Metroidvanias, or if you want a new title for the Steam Deck, as it also plays pretty well on there too. Alright, it's time to make the jump from cheeky horror themes to actual, bizarrely inexplicable horrors. I'm talking about How Fish is Made, a very nearly indescribable game that I'm now going to attempt to describe. How Fish is Made has you flopping around as a fish out of water, talking to other fish and making choices that are, let's just say, interesting. I fully understand I'm doing a very bad job of describing it because frankly I barely even know what I played, and at least one of the surprises it has in store is one you wouldn't believe even if I told you. What I can tell you though is that whatever weird little part of my brain gets tickled by the inexplicable strangeness of good cosmic horror was firing on all cylinders here, wanting to know more about this disgusting, bizarre world. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, check it out. I'm pretty sure you'll be glad you did. Keeping up the horror theme, my next pick is one of the most memorable free games I've certainly ever played, and one designed with such a unique hook for ratcheting up tension that it's impossible not to mention here. I'm talking about Unsorted Horror, an anthology of short horror games built around the idea of toying with obtuse machinery in a tense world where time, among other things, may not be on your side. In playing this, I was most reminded of games like Iron Lung, where the gameplay is designed to feel a bit tedious at first. It's also worth noting that this anthology is brought to us by Mike Klubnica, who's most recently known for releasing Buckshot Roulette, another short, albeit not free, game that I absolutely love to literal death for its dreadful atmosphere and incredible feelings of anxiety that it provokes. And the other thing that I'll mention is despite Unsorted Horror being labeled as playable on Steam Deck, I personally found that to be a little bit of a stretch since the game doesn't technically support controllers. The Steam Deck is flexible enough that you could likely get it working through a community layout or your own configuring, but be aware that while it boots up on the deck, it's not quite as plug and play as most other games on this list and requires a little bit of tinkering. At last, and in no particular order, we get to my final pick, a pixel art indie platformer called Sheepy, a short adventure, which surprised me almost immediately. Before I got to the title screen, a recommendation came up to play the game with headphones. Now, if you told me that a free pixel art game starring a stuffed animal sheep is the type of experience I need to put earbuds in for to fully immerse myself, I'd probably not believe you. But that is indeed the case here. For reasons beyond my understanding, Sheepy is free despite having some of the best production value I've seen from a 2D pixel art game. For one, the animations are absolutely fantastic. Each of Sheepy's movements is adorably calibrated to make you feel like a cute little sheep, and the enemies are, well, the less spoiled of them here the better, but let's just say some of them are animated convincingly enough to be pretty damn creepy. Yes, I did say creepy. Sheepy, a short adventure, adorable title be damned, is a surprisingly tense and atmospheric game. With a solid soundtrack, great environmental sound effects that make each level feel like a real space, and art design that punches well above its weight class. It's hard to make a direct comparison, but parts of it reminded me of the game Inmost, an underrated platformer if I've ever seen one. Sheepy's actual gameplay is that of a simple platformer, albeit one that feels very tight and fun to control for the short duration it lasts. I can't say the platforming is in any way challenging, as Sheepy, a short adventure, seems more interested in telling you a story and immersing you in its environment, but it's just engaging enough to keep you moving forward and certainly good enough to go on this list. And there you have it. If you're looking for something to play without having to spend a dime, you can't go wrong with any of these games because I was frankly surprised they're free in the first place. If you get a chance to try any of them out, let us know what you think in the comments below. And keep it here at I Dream of Indie Games for more coverage of both the indie games you know you love and the ones you don't know you love yet.